All right, guys, welcome to Macbeth Act 2. This is your Macbeth notebook number 3, but we are in Act 2. And so this week, our learning targets will be the same. You can cite strong and thorough textual evidence to support your analysis of what the text says, which means you can pull out a line from the play and you can cite it correctly in MLA format, and you can use it to support whatever you are saying or your ideas. Number 2, that you can determine a theme of a text, but you can also trace its development throughout the entire text. And so last week we had 4 themes that we were focusing on. That's my dog. And last week you had to choose one that you want to follow for the rest of the play. And this week you are going to do that. And you're going to trace its development. In other words, how does Shakespeare develop the theme, make it, kind of grow? He does it through character, but we're going to look at that. So we're involved in the tracing of it. And then the third one, can you analyze complex characters, their motivations, and how Shakespeare uses characters, the characterization, direct and indirect characterization, to develop one of his themes? So we're going to see that connection. They connect together, okay? As far as points today, so you've got, or this week, this is the week 3 notebook, which means you are looking at Act 2. All activities are in your notebook, just like last week. So it's just one thing that you're turning in. So you are going to make sure you view the instructional video, which is this. It's really an instructional overview because there are many instructional videos within the notebook. And so this is kind of the overview just to make sure you know what you're doing for the week. Okay. So for Whitworth, that's going to be in the notebook. It may be on Edpuzzle too. And for me, it's on Edpuzzle. It's worth an extra or a 20 points, which is in addition to the points that you see here. So you're going to read Act 2, scenes 1 through 4. There are only 4 scenes. So this is one of his shortest plays. And so every time you read, it's going to get a little shorter, a little shorter, a little shorter, which means it's going to go quicker. Okay. And this is like one of the big key acts. And really, we're going to focus on, there's a lot of things that Shakespeare does in this play. I mean, you could probably take a year-long course over Macbeth and still not cover all of the amazing things that he does in the play. Like, he's super, super bright, and he appeals to multiple different levels. One of the things that he does that we want to focus on this week and going forward is the fact that Duncan is being killed, right? But the leading up to how Macbeth and Banquo act leading up to that, how Lady Macbeth acts leading up to that, but also the role of sleep. So the role of sleep, meaning Shakespeare is going to really focus on sleep and lack of sleep with his characters. And what is the role of sleep in his play, and what does it symbolize? So it's basically a motif, which is a pattern, something that is repeated throughout the entire text that becomes symbolic in some way. So this week, as you read, I want you to focus on noticing how many times he uses or references sleep in some way. He might not just say the word sleep, he might reference it in a different way, but how many times does he do that? And then you need to start thinking to yourself, why? Because when we see a pattern that is repeated, that repetition, that pattern, it means something. He's trying to tell you something. Then in this case, it's symbolic of something. So I want that to be in the back of your mind as you're completing this, okay? And so then once you're reading, general students, you're gonna make sure you're doing study guide questions. Honor students, you're doing annotations and a 4, 3, 2, 1 response, just like you did last week. You're also gonna do what's called a sleep log. And so you're gonna wanna make sure you look at that. You're going to still have character activities, but that's reduced. You're not looking at as many characters, and you're going to look at a foil. You're also going to look at the theme activities, but that section is also reduced because you're choosing one theme to focus on. And then you have journal prompts. There are 2 journal prompts this week that we need you to complete, and they will double as a vocab quiz grade. So you want to keep that in mind. So the vocab portion of that will be 30 points of an evidence of learning. Overall, so total this notebook this week is 130. 50 of it is a learn about it, which is 50 points. And then the other 50 is the practice it, which is that 35% of your grade. And that's 50 points. we're suggesting that you start on this right away on the 16th. And it's going to be due on the 22nd by 11:59 p.m. So I'm going to briefly kind of show you what's in the notebook this week, and make sure you understand, what you need to do. Just like last week and the week before, you want to pay attention to what's on the sides, because a lot of times I will, give directions on the sides. There'll be extra videos to help you and whatnot, and so forth. Additionally, remember that you're going to see these here, and if you hover over them, then you can click play, and you'll hear my voice of me talking you through each of these steps. Just like last week, we gave you a time management. We gave you a time management section. And so you want to make sure that you're focused on that. So whether you're honors or general, you've got the same amount of slides here. It's just that there's a difference between study guide questions and annotations for honors, but we're saying the same. Another thing, honors, we're going to take a break from rhetoric this week because I want you to get through Act 2 and Act 3 before we pick up back on rhetoric next when we come back. So you don't have to worry about that component this week. So I want to make sure that you understand that, look, there's like at least 10 to 12, maybe 13 of these slides, maybe up to 15 are directional, okay? Meaning there's nothing you have to do on it. There's just, you might have to review a direction, okay? Which means there's only 30 slides, I think, in this, and that means there's about 15 that you actually have to work on. So the same thing as last week. I've got this in present mode right now. You've got the play. Here are all your documents. Like I said last week and the week before, my Shakespeare and Stratford Festival performance, those are like the best resources right now that I would use. You have a schedule for the whole entire unit, and we are right here in week 3. And then you have the time management. Now, I'm not gonna go over time management this week. There's little things that you're doing every single day. But I would listen to this before you begin. Like immediately on Monday, I'd listen because I break it down for you and I help give you some tools, okay? Just like last week, if you turn this in before Sunday, before the due date on the 22nd, you get extra credit, okay? You still see that, like, we're at slide 5 in and you haven't had to do anything. It's just some of the same things already that you had before. The notebook, you've got your note. Remember that you get 2 grades, completion of all the things, and then I choose 1 for accuracy. So you'll see those right here. The instructional video, again, you're gonna make sure that you watch it. You're probably watching it right now, obviously, if you hear me, but it'll also be in your notebook as well as on Edpuzzle. Slide 7, again, it's the same Macbeth Scotland. There was some confusion or a clarification question last week about, why this battle is so important. I need to put you in the context. I'm going to answer that in this video. This play takes place in the 11th century Scotland, okay? So in that time period, it is super violent. People did not live long lives. You had a high mortality rate. And so what you need to understand about Macbeth's Scotland is they were all fighting for power. Like you had different factions basically fighting, different things. They're all fighting for different power. And you have Duncan, who is the king of Scotland, trying to keep his power. He's supposed to be the king of peace, but he's fighting the Norwegians so that they don't come and take over. And he wins, etc. And Macbeth helps him. So in understanding the context of that part of the play, just know that, fighting is normal. Going outside, because it was such a dangerous and violent time, you always suited up, you geared up, you had your dagger, you had your sword. You were not going to go outside that castle without that because you didn't know who was going to come and get you. So that's the kind of Scotland you are in. And you just got to understand that there are 2 different kingdoms fighting, Scotland versus what you hear as the Norwegians. Also remember that Macbeth is making social commentary on England, about England at the time. And so there's a lot more to that context, but that should hopefully answer the question that was asked of me a little bit earlier. The next slide, it's the same, as last time. Here's how you do MLA in-text citation format for when you pull the line, when you pull the line from the play. So it's right there, okay? It's the same thing. You don't have to do anything, but you need this knowledge. And yes, when we grade, we are looking, did you cite it correctly in the right format? If you didn't, we're going to say you need to go review this slide. Okay, that will deduct points. That's my dogs. They're a little noisy. We've already talked about the learning targets. So what I want to point out in here is you have the same things basically that you were doing last week, except with a new act, right? And I said you're focusing on sleep. This is the act where Duncan gets murdered by Macbeth. And there is a scene in, I think it's scene 4, where he's trying, he's almost like trying to persuade himself not to, but then he's made this conscious decision that he's going to. And Duncan gets killed between scenes. You never see the death, and you need to ask yourself, why is that? Like, what would be the purpose of that? But the other thing we want you to focus on is that idea of sleep. And we're going to really talk about it when we get to Act 3, but we want to like pop it up in your brain. And so in order to do that, we're asking that you complete a sleep log during the time for this next week. And so for 4 consecutive days, meaning one after another, I don't care what day you started, you can do Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever, you're going to keep a sleep log. Now, I'm not going to tell you all the parts of this, but what I am going to say is I'm going to point this out. Please listen to me, like click this when you get the slides, because it's going to go more in depth and I'm going to give you some examples and hints, but also watch this video, because when you watch that video, it's going to talk more about sleep and just the psychology of sleep. And then we're going to start asking you to connect that to sleep in Macbeth and why that is a motif and why that becomes symbolic. So this is just kind of like an introductory. I would start that on Monday. And the same things, like, so there's 2 things there. You've got your study guide questions, honors, you've got your annotations. So that's 4 slides. So if you look at this, even though it's 30 slides, about half of these slides are just directional or like placeholders. Like, here's your characters. Notice we cut down on characters. You're just looking at Macbeth and Lady Macbeth and their motivation, and you're looking at foil. That's it. Theme, you've got 2 slides. Listen to this before you begin. Do what it says. Journal responses, like I said, I really hope that you understand this. These are going to be counted as a vocab quiz. Last week you had a Freyer model, so please click this before you start and listen to my directions. You'll also notice they're on the next couple pages as well, where I break down the prompt for you. So that's pretty much it as far as this overview. I'm really excited about this scene, especially scene 4. I'm sorry, act 2, scene 4. The dagger scene is phenomenal. Please reach out if you have any questions. And that, my friends, is it.